As has become seemingly the norm these days in online film discourse, there are people complaining that the Marvel Cinematic Universe is suddenly political and inserting things in there when the movies are meant to be just escapism and fun. And I wonder why there are these comments now when the political themes have been there since the beginning. And I'm not just talking about the movies. Back when Marvel Comics was named Timely Comics, Joe Simon decided to create a superhero who would go up against the totalitarian regime of Adolf Hitler, which Simon was completely opposed to and did not want to see infest life in America. That inspired the creation of Captain America, with him partnering with Jack Kirby, who held similar views. Thus, the first issue of Captain America had him punch Hitler in the face, with it even being published several months before the United States entered World War II. Stan Lee would also famously use the comics to address social issues and highlight the importance of accepting others. The X-Men in particular tackled the need for equal rights, with Professor Xavier Magneto's approaches often drawing comparisons to Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X. Throughout the years, Marvel Comics would address topics like corrupt politicians, racial injustice, drug addiction, and geopolitical conflicts. Stan Lee and the other writers and artists wanted to touch on subjects that regular people would have to deal with, depending on what place in the world they live or which community they are a part of. That was a major reason for the success of Marvel, along with the fantastical abilities of their heroes and villains. And right off the bat, the Marvel Cinematic Universe would also touch on political and real-world themes between the big special effects spectacles. Iron Man is very much a product of post-9/11 cinema, as Tony Stark's origin story involves him selling weapons to the US military to help the war in Afghanistan. His decision to stop being a weapons manufacturer then comes from him finding out his weapons are going into the wrong hands and being used to kill innocent civilians. It's difficult to watch that first Iron Man movie and not think about the political climate at the time. A major theme that runs through the entire franchise is the role the government plays in these superheroes and how they respond to the commands given to them by the politicians. A big part of Nick Fury's character is him often ignoring the demands of those in more powerful positions as he feels they run counter to his role to protect people. A major arc would come with the Sokovia Accords and their decision to control what superheroes can do, which creates a rift between the heroes in Captain America's Civil War. You even had viewers picking sides and being on Team Iron Man or Team Captain America, like they're choosing political opponents to vote for an election or deciding who to support in a geopolitical conflict. Another major event came in Captain America the Winter Soldier, when it was revealed that Hydra long infiltrated themselves in S.H.I.E.L.D. The idea that a group with an ideology so opposed to democratic values would become part of this government agency probably seemed absurd and far-fetched when the film was released, but now it's absolutely a situation that can happen, although that also has obvious parallels to Operation Paperclip, a program where former Nazi scientists became involved in the development of NASA. Then you have the relationships the individual Avengers have with governments. As I mentioned, Tony Stark sold weapons to the military. Steve Rogers was recruited for a super soldier experiment to help defeat the Nazis, and then was used to promote war bonds. Bruce Banner was frequently on the run from the US military before he joins the Avengers, and Black Widow and Hawkeye worked directly with the government as secret agents performing missions. Meanwhile, Thor has the political issues in his own realm, of his father's conquering and their conflicts with other beings. His third solo film, Thor Ragnarok, even touches on how Odin hid the history of Asgard, making it seem more noble and heroic than it actually was. Another hero who reckons with his country's place in the universe is T'Challa in Black Panther. That moved the question why Wakanda chose to isolate itself from other countries and hide their technological advances rather than using them to help others. Eric Killmonger's view that Wakanda could have helped those like himself who were living in difficult situations even lets T'Challa see a different perspective than what he was brought up believing. There are few examples like this in the MCU of characters trying to overcome the sins of their parents and attempt to create a better world for others. How about the other villains? A lot of them have a thirst for power, which is typical movie villainy, but what are they beyond that? Red Skull has the same desires as superior Hitler to conquer the world, making him just as much a threat as the Nazis and their tyrannical plot. Killian, the villain in Iron Man 3, preys on people's fear of foreign terrorism by hiring an actor to play the fake leader of a terrorist organization who makes threatening comments on the air. And in Spider-Man Homecoming, Adrian Toome's actions driven by the government taking work from him after the battle in New York and turning to arms trafficking. Then you have the biggest foe the heroes ever faced, which was Thanos. Thanos has this insane plan to wipe out half the universe to overcome what he deems an unsustainable division of resources. He's basically proposing genocide, which he then eventually succeeds in doing at the end of Avengers Infinity War. We then find out in Endgame his plan does not actually improve life in the universe, as many people and animals suffer as a result. Thanos represents a lot of those historical and even current despots with deadly plans that fit a close-minded vision of the world that only harms people and creates all new problems. You also have the specific lives of the characters and how that informs their decision-making. Scott Lang's past criminal record affects his ability to gain employment even at Baskin-Robbins, reflecting the difficulties faced by former prisoners with a genuine interest in being a good citizen. Part of Steve Rogers' arc throughout the franchise comes from starting out as someone with a longing to aid his country in war to becoming more cynical about the choices made by the government the longer he stays in the 21st century. A common remark said about the MCU is that they glamorize the American military, and I can sort of see why some would come to that conclusion. Captain Marvel is probably the most blatant with that movie depicting Carol Danvers excitedly joining the Air Force. You have Captain America, the first Avenger, with its military marches, and Steve Rogers joining other soldiers to bring down the Nazis and Hydra. But of course, that was World War II, which would have gone very differently had the Allies not come together to take down Hitler's genocidal regime. Characters like Sam Wilson and James Rhodes have a military background, which proved helpful when they joined the other heroes in defeating the villains. However, the franchise does not exactly portray General Thunderbolt Ross in a positive light, particularly his obsessive pursuit of Bruce Banner in The Incredible Hulk, and we're not meant to take his side in many of his other appearances as well. Now, the politics I'm talking about is related to the government and the heroes fighting for social justice. What the types who complain about politics in the Marvel Cinematic Universe nowadays are really talking about is the fact that we're seeing more women and people of different ethnicities becoming heroes in the movies, even though the Marvel comics have had a diverse slate for several decades now, and this is reflected in the movies. Why wouldn't they eventually bring those characters to the screen? For a while, Marvel Studios head Kevin Feige even grew frustrated that he could not give some of these characters movies sooner. Do you know why the Black Widow movie did not start filming until 2019, despite the main demand for one? Former Marvel CEO Isaac Perlmutter was opposed to the idea, as he believed female superhero movies were box office poison, and unfortunately Feige had to report directly to him. He also tried to delay development on a Black Panther movie, even though Blade was one of the first hit movies based on a Marvel comic. In 2015, Bob Iger listened to Feige's frustrations and restructured Disney so that he could report directly to the chairman of Walt Disney Studios, giving Perlmutter basically no say in the Marvel movies. Although here's the thing, simply having a movie or show star a woman or a person of color does not immediately make it political. It's what they do with the characters that make it political. There were people who called the Disney Plus show Miss Marvel political simply because it was about a Muslim teenager and her family. But the politics of the series does not come from showing Kamala Khan going to a mosque or participating in prayer. The political elements come from how the show depicts the treatment of the mosque members by American government agents and its telling of the partition that eventually led to present-day India and Pakistan. Something I've noticed with the Marvel Cinematic Universe is that even with the political themes I mentioned, they generally try to avoid controversy as much as possible. It's why, for instance, when it depicts politicians like the President of the United States, we're never told which political party they belong to. When it was announced that the Israeli superhero Sabra, aka Ruth Bat-Saraf, would appear in the fourth Captain America movie, there was an outcry over this character being included, as anything related to Israel often does. However, I had a feeling the only hints to a nationality would be her name and the actress playing her, and I was largely right, as there's one single reference to a place of birth when a character quickly mentioned she was born in Israel. She was even changed from a Mossad agent to a former Black Widow who now works for the American government. Meanwhile, the title of the movie was altered from Captain America New World Order to Brave New World, when people pointed out the original title association with anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. But as you can see, politics have always been ingrained in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, whether it's the larger role that governments play in the narrative, or how certain life experiences like war and discrimination impact the characters and their decisions. It adds to the reality of the world these superheroes live in, even when they deal with invading alien forces and magical beings. See you next time.